literally flooring it right now. YESVIN's in the back. Literally flooring it all the way up here. People taking photos. This guy is driving my car, and I'm driving his car. And right off the bat, probably has 20 more horsepower. We'll find out.
He wasn't lying when he said he was flooring it the whole way.
I am definitely putting a Weber on my car. This thing is literally like 40 more horsepower. God damn. This is literally like 40 more horsepower. And there's no power above 3K. This thing keeps going. Okay, back in our own cars. And the slowest car ever. At least she looks like a cool car. Not fast at all. We are back with my 1976 Celica. You know, when it comes to atomization and carburation of fuel, the stock Eisen 2-barrel carburetor does an okay job. The first barrel is directly connected through the linkage. The second one comes on, it is vacuum actuated, and the diaphragm that activates it always goes bad. What is nice about this is it does have a choke. It's a water choke. So coolant just goes through here, and as soon as the car warms up, the plate opens. And I've never had trouble with a cold start with this. This is the carb, and this is all the junk that it's connected to. A bunch of vacuum switching valves, an air pump that goes to the air box, switches and actuators, and a bunch of doodads that we don't need unless we want to pass smog. So I've decided to clean all this up, rip it all out, and replace it with this. This is a Weber 38 clone, available at Walmart. It was only 51 bucks. I have the same one in my Corolla. Essentially, what any normal person would do is buy an adapter plate, unbolt the stock carb, bolt on the adapter plate, put the new carb on, and connect the linkage and fill, and you're good to go. So I was looking at adapter plates, and the cheapest one was about $30. It was a 2-piece, so they're known for leaking. And the nice one is probably $60 to $70, but I didn't want to pay that. So yeah, what we have here is an extra 20R intake manifold. Toss it into the sonic washer about once or twice. Could be a little better. Then we have a gasket for this carburetor. As you know, the holes do not line up, the studs do not line up, so that's not going to work. But what I'm planning on doing is tracing this gasket on here, port matching it to blend it into the stock ports, re-drilling 4 holes with a 8x1.25 thread, put the studs in. Hopefully we can bolt this sucker on. I can move the fuel inlet onto this side, and butterflies won't even open because we're already hitting this stuff. We're gonna have to hog this out. Burp, 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 burp. Just to get a little more meat on to this thing, I'm going to attempt to TIG weld some aluminum material here to fill this, and also weld here to fill this. Look at the bottom of this, there's this big void here, so I want the gasket to sit on the perimeter of this. And then yeah, this has a water choke. I'm thinking about deleting this. Water flows into the bottom of this intake manifold from the actual water neck. So I'm thinking if I'm just able to weld all of this, clean it really good, take off this back plate and weld it from the other side. Let's see if this works. Yeah. That sucker was tight. One thing I'm gonna do is grind all this up because this is super dirty and I suck at welding aluminum because I won't be able to get it from this side. Okay, so after dipping my tungsten a couple times, this is what we're left with. That should be enough meat to sand down. Hopefully not burning my hand, but we should be around here. Essentially, I'm just hitting these high spots. This is already a low spot. Don't want to take off any more until it starts making contact with the base. Okay, so sanded this the best I could. That's more or less flat. This linkage hits this area, which is fine. I could just freaking chop this all the way off. So yeah, there's actually a lot more meat now. There's no overhang. The gasket's not overhanging. So I hit this up with some marking fluid. I usually use a Sharpie, but I use my $2 spray paint can. I'm gonna try to make this part of the flange parallel to start marking. Okay, take that off. I gotta take off all this material, drill and tap these holes, and then make clearance for that linkage. Okay guys, just pay the $60. So yeah, my lack of skill, I was walking out. Okay, brand new Amazon Chinese drill bits. Not the best, but not the worst. M8 requires 2.63. This is 2.5. This is where we have to drill straight. Piles of chips everywhere. More or less, we're in our holes. Get your tap, dip this thing in oil. Note to self, buy a proper tap set. 2 steps in, 1 step out. 2 steps in, 1 step out. Sand this surface again. Okay, there we are. That came out better than I thought. And check out all these aluminum shavings right next to this 4AG. Okay, so I plated off the back here, welded it all up. It was terrible. On this side, I had to cut off the flange to clear the linkage, but now the linkage hits this part, so I'm gonna have to bolt on a spacer. It's gonna hit. Here I am trying to polish this thing. I mean, there's a lot of nooks and crannies to sand, so I think that's probably the best it's gonna get on this side. But here's the spacer I 3D printed, just 2 studs, and the linkage faces this side. And then okay, so just gave this thing a quick spit shine and bolted it up without gaskets. I mean, probably could have sanded it a lot more, like a lot more. But, you know, it's good enough for me. After spending way too much time polishing this manifold, let's just put this thing in. Got this thing in the deep fryer. So I cracked the bottom radiator drain, and I also took off the cap. There's the drain right there. So the other end of this can now be capped because on the new one we deleted this port. We're gonna try to keep this all in one piece. Look at that. This, good thing I disconnected the battery. Toyotas are easy yet so complicated. Okay, so we have this coolant line, which is right up against the bolt for the intake manifold. I want to say this is the only thing holding it in. I almost forgot to take off the throttle linkage. Get this thing off. I ripped the gasket. Hopefully I have another gasket. And I gotta build a plate for this dang EGR. We're also taking off the pump, smog pump. So I guess back in the day, Toyota wasn't that great with engineering. And there is just enough room. I reprinted the spacer because the dimensions were a little off. I have 240 grit sandpaper here. We're just gonna kiss it. Okay, this, not too bad. Missing some layers there, but this is 14 millimeters thick. We did, I don't know, 3 walls at 40% infill, but it feels pretty strong. Everybody. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Multiple things going on right now. I need an EGR block off plate. By just doing that. All right, after grinding, I really hate going to AutoZone, but we got no choice. It is the right gasket, I have confirmed. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I also just kissed the ports on the inside, got rid of some of the rough casting. That's how it looked originally. I mean, this just came out of the sonic washer. I could just probably buff this up with the wheel real quick, but good enough. Measures, we're just gonna Honda bond this thing in place. And then I guess the other gasket is literally whatever. All right. Okay, little side-by-side comparison. This versus that. Panning for gold. Okay, gotta switch the outlet from this side to this side. Drop this right in here. Light snugness. We're not gonna crank down on this thing. Okay. And I'm literally ready. So yeah, as you can see, it's in the garage and I didn't push it. Just sprayed a little bit of brake cleaner in, hooked up the feed line, got it to idle, turned up the idle, and just let go of the clutch slowly, and now we're here. I gotta say though, this thing is super responsive. How to hook this up. Okay, well, I never know what I'm doing, yet we're doing it. A little bit of modification. Okay, snug. Little tab here is mi seguro de vida. My calculations are correct. This should snap in. All right, and then we should put a washer behind that and some safety wire. Okay, we don't have a return line, but I just want to see if the linkage works and if it'll idle again. Probably flooded. Sounds like my brother's Chinook. All right, got the return line here. Got the evap here. Gotta figure out what to do with that. Here's a little close-up of my throttle. I'm guessing this hooks up here. So we're here sometime later in the future. Remember that return line I didn't know what to do with? So yeah, I found this fuel filter that has a return line built into it. So electronic pump, it is filtered, goes through here. This is the feed, and this is the return. Not sure how much PSI, but this is for a bunch of carbureted cars, so I don't think I'll have an issue. And yeah, for people who want to know, it is a Wix 33040, about $7 on Amazon, $5 on Rock Auto. And below that, we actually have valve springs for a future cam install video, because I have a cam for this. We'll now see if it starts with the new filter regulator. Gotta prime some fuel. And this has an electronic fuel pump that will cut off once oil pressure goes to 0, or there's a switch. Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Pretty much a reminder to myself not to drive this car. I left the radiator cap there. So we gotta top off the coolant. So did I mention that my return line was just dripping hella fuel and pretty much destroyed my sheet vinyl floor, and the whole garage was reeking like gas. Is this an A? It is an A. I only use the finest water, mountain mist distilled water. I think I got this in Oregon, tax-free. I mean, yeah, we'll probably put some coolant in here also, you know? Feeling a little generous. Pretty much we're on the driveway and it's angled up, so this should be the highest point. I mean, I could probably crack the coolant hose or radiator hose to bleed out the air, but we'll just let this thing do its job. And while this thing's bleeding, I'm going to turn in the idle jets and back them out. Should be about 1.5. Really can't get to this side because of this vacuum switching valve. Half, 1, 1.5, 2. 2.5, 3. So this was 3 turns out, so we're going to try to get it 1.5. Half, 1.5. So we're just letting this idle, bleeding the coolant system, getting all the bubbles out. But while we're doing that, we might as well inflate the tires with our Avapow AP18 tire inflator. And I would unbox it on my table, but I have a broken 4AG here. I'd unbox it on my tool chest, but we got a bunch of junk here. But hey, look at this, a flat surface that isn't being utilized. Alright, so yeah, we'll just use my welding table. AP18. Did I mention my finger's all messed up? I dropped an engine on it. Okay, look at that. It looks almost like my jump starter in its little pack. Look at that. I like how it has its own case. A lot of places just kind of have a sack, but this has a durable protective case. I like that. Open it up. Look at that. Even has a little protectant here so tire inflator doesn't get scratched up and dinged up with all this stuff. I like that. USB Type-C, I like that. And I like the quick connect for this, right? A lot of other ones are quick connect here and twist on here because you got to do this once and you got to do this connection 4 times. Okay, cool. Always got to have a light with these things. We're going to take off this cover. This is the nicest it's ever going to be. After I take this off, I already got oily gloves over it. So car, scooter, bicycle, basketball. So we'll go to the car. Preset to 36. Let's just go 34. And see how quick this takes to push in and lock in. Okay, look at that. We are 20.5 psi. I knew it was low, but not that low. So let's turn it on. So while we're letting that do its thing, it's at 21.5. We'll just make sure we're not overheating and warping our block and head. Our temp is about 1/4. And we still have coolant. And it is bubbling, probably because the thermostat is now just opening and it's letting all the air circulate out. I mean, dude, this sounds good. I almost feel like I don't need to rejet it. Yeah, it's not that hot. 28.5. Squeeze the hose a couple times. Get these bubbles out. I want to make sure there's no coolant or water. Okay, 34. Unclip it. This might be a 2 hands. No, we're good. And yeah, we can't forget to hook up our distributor for the advance. It was connected to this bottom portion of the manifold. You can hear the idle drop. Okay, and yeah, obviously our idle is going to change because our timing is going to change, so I gotta turn down the idle. All right, 34, 26.5. Yeah, we're a little high. Now our idle is like 1.1. We back off this screw a little. Listen for the idle change. We'll go half a turn out. Any lower and this linkage is going to hit that C-clip. We got a little bit of a clearance issue. Okay, yeah, just under 1. I think I'm okay with that. We're gonna leave it a little higher because even when it gets warmer, it might drop down even more. We hit 34 and it's a little warm, but I can put my hand on it. Did I mention I messed up my finger? All right, how easy is it to put away? You put the do and the da. Put this back. The zip and the zap. and throw it in your trunk. So yeah, charge port's at the very bottom. And then we'll plug this in. Okay, yeah, and then we got an indicator. I think we can turn this off. Realistically, I should have changed my radiator hose as well. I had the coolant system down, but I'm planning on flushing the system again when I do the camshaft. So just squeeze out any more air bubbles, right? And this is going to prevent it from leaking. Put the plug in, pull it out, make a mess, pull out the plug, and then the rest strips back into our container. Look at this cap. Let me see if I have another cap. Assembled in Mexico. So thank you, Avapow, for the AP18 tire inflator. We're now safe to drive on the road. Slowly, this car is just getting a little better than before. I just stalled. I probably flooded it. That was great. Massive improvement. So I don't know if it's a throttle return spring, but it's a little tough to get very light throttle. And if I check here, it's dry. Wow, this thing feels real good. I don't even know if I want to put a cam in it. I don't know if I'm gonna lose any low end. So closing out the video, looking at the angle of this, you know, this is cocked over all the way, so it's going to take a lot of power to get this over. If this is in the upright position, throttle modulation would be a little easier. So what I got to do is redo this linkage and make sure it's clocked over a little more. Get your flat file to flatten it, and then you get your rasp round file, and then you're done. Okay, so this thing is at a much better angle. And now we can actually ease into the gas steady without it sticking.